I've got something truly wild for you today. Picture this, a team of college football all-stars going head-to-head with defending NFL champions. I'm talking about actual, real-life matchups between some of the best young players in the college and the biggest and the meanest, most talented NFL stars of all time. And no, I'm not talking about some fantasy matchup or video game simulation. This was a real game that happened every year for over 40 years. It sounds crazy today, but back in the day, it was one of the most talked about events in sports. But let me tell you, it didn't end well. What started as a thrilling and competitive game devolved into one of the strangest, most chaotic experiments in football history. So buckle up, because we're diving into the story of the College All-Star Football Classic, a game that ended in disaster. Let's rewind the clock back to the 1930s. The NFL we know and love today wasn't always the juggernaut it is now. Back then, it was actually struggling to get attention. Baseball and boxing were the kings of American sports, and pro football was barely a blip on the radar. In fact, many NFL teams struggled to even fill their stadiums. Enter Arch Ward, a sports editor at the Chicago Tribune. This guy was a major influencer in the world of sports, and he had a bold idea to help the NFL gain some much-needed attention. What better way to do that than by organizing a charity game between the top college football players in the country and the defending NFL champions? This would pit the future stars of football against the league's current champions, and he figured it would attract both media attention and massive crowds. And spoiler alert, he was right. The first game took place in 1934 at Chicago's Soldier Field, with nearly 80,000 fans packing the stands. That's right, this game drew more fans than most regular NFL games at the time. The inaugural game ended in a 0-0 tie between the college all-stars and the Chicago Bears. And while that might sound a bit dull today, it was an exciting start to what would become a long-running tradition. Ward had struck gold. The Chicago College All-Star Game quickly became an annual event, and it wasn't just about football. It was a charity game with proceeds going to local causes, which helped boost its appeal even more. Fans loved the idea of watching young college talent compete with seasoned NFL pros. The fact that the game was competitive right from the start gave it an edge. People actually believed that the college kids could win, and sometimes they did. As the years went by, the College All-Star Game grew in popularity. By the 1940s, the game was drawing crowds of over 100,000 people. Between 1934 and 1963, the College All-Stars actually managed to win 9 times. 9. For a team of players who had never played together before, that's pretty impressive. But how did they do it? How did a group of college kids thrown together for a few practices compete with NFL teams that had spent years playing and training together? Well, in the early years, NFL players didn't train year-round. They often worked regular jobs in the off-season. Some were factory workers, others were teachers. Pro football just didn't have the prestige or the pay that it has now. Meanwhile, college football was hugely popular. In fact, college football was often seen as the purer version of the sport, with more well-known players. So these college all-star teams were stacked with some of the most talented, well-known athletes in the country. There's one story that really captures this dynamic. Jackie Robinson, the guy who broke baseball's color barrier, actually played in the College All-Star Game in 1941. Robinson was an incredible athlete, and one of the Chicago Bears' top players at the time said that Robinson was the fastest guy he had ever seen in a football uniform. This was a time when the NFL hadn't fully integrated, but the College All-Stars were ahead of the curve, letting black players participate before the NFL did. That alone gave the college team a bit of an edge in terms of raw athletic talent. For a while, the games were pretty competitive. The College All-Stars were able to hold their own, and even though the NFL teams won more often than not, the games were never complete blowouts. Fans loved it. It was charity, it was football, and it was exciting. But as the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, things started to change. The NFL was growing in popularity, and so were the expectations for NFL players. The league was becoming more professional, and players were finally training year-round. This created a widening gap in talent and skill between the NFL champions and the college all-stars. By mid-1970s, the NFL had truly arrived. The league was starting to dominate the sports landscape, and its players were bigger, faster, and stronger than ever before. Meanwhile, the college all-stars were still just that, college players. And while they were incredibly talented, they didn't have the cohesion or experience of the NFL teams. By 1963, the college all-stars won their last game. After that, the NFL teams dominated, and the all-stars didn't win a single game for the next 13 years. The game started to lose its luster. What was once a highly anticipated event was starting to feel like a lopsided mismatch. Fans were excited about watching a bunch of college kids get steamrolled by the NFL champs. Attendance numbers started to drop, and then came 1976, the year that everything fell apart. The 1976 game was the final nail in the coffin. It was supposed to be a matchup between the college all-stars and the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you know anything about football in the 1970s, you know that the Steelers weren't just any NFL team, they were a dynasty. This was the Steel Curtain Defense, one of the most ferocious, dominant teams in NFL history. The All-Stars were up against a brick wall. The game was played in absolutely miserable conditions. It was raining so hard that parts of the field were submerged underwater. The game quickly turned into a disaster. The college team's starting quarterback, who had just been drafted by the Steelers, got injured early in the game. Then, the backup quarterback also went down with an injury. So, by the time the game was in full swing, the college all-stars were down to their third-string quarterback. It was bad, real bad. To make matters worse, the Steelers were up 24-0 by the third quarter. The game had become completely one-sided, and then something even crazier happened. The weather conditions were getting worse, and the All-Stars coach called a timeout because of the high winds and lightning. The field was a mess, with standing water and mud everywhere. But that was just the beginning of the chaos. During the timeout, fans, many of whom were drunk, stormed the field. It was total anarchy. People were sliding around in the mud, fighting, and some fans even managed to tear down one of the goalposts. The game was officially out of control. NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle had seen enough, and he called the game right there and then. The Steelers won, of course, but the game was so embarrassing that it marked the end of the college All-Star Football Classic. After 42 years, the series was done. So, why did it fail? What caused this once beloved game to collapse so spectacularly? First, by the 1970s, the NFL had become a multi-million-dollar industry. Players were full-time professionals, training year-round, and playing at a much higher level than their predecessors. Meanwhile, the college players were still amateurs. No matter how talented they were, they simply couldn't compete with the NFL champions anymore. The level of competition was completely lopsided. The game had also lost its original charm. What started as a thrilling competitive matchup between college and NFL stars had become a boring pre-season exhibition that nobody really cared about. By the 1970s, most fans saw it for what it was, a game that didn't really matter. The players weren't taking it seriously, and neither were the fans. Then there were injuries. The risk of injury in a game that had no real stakes was a major problem. In 1949, one player suffered such a bad knee injury during practice that he never played a single down in the NFL. That was always a concern for players, especially as the game evolved and the NFL became more physical. By the 1970s, players didn't want to risk their careers by playing in a game that didn't count for anything. The college all-stars couldn't keep up, and the NFL teams were no longer taking the game seriously. Attendance numbers had been steadily declining for years, and the whole thing just felt outdated. Now, here's a fun thought experiment. What if the college all-star game was brought back today? Imagine a team made up of the best college players from the last NFL Combine going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. How would that game go? On one side, you've got the Chiefs, with an all-time great quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. On the other hand, you've got a group of college stars who are just about to make the jump to the pros. Would the college kids even stand a chance? Honestly, probably not. The gap between college and professional football has only gotten wider. Today's NFL players are faster, stronger, and more skilled than ever before. While college players are certainly talented, they're not at the same level as the pros. A game like this would likely be a blowout, with the Chiefs running up the score early. But hey, it'll still be fun to watch, right? Let me know what you think in the comments. If this game were played today, what would the final score be? Would the college all-stars have any chance at all? I'd love to hear your predictions.